Surum di rorum di rattle little owl.
Closer to Tales for Wales, the pod that will bash you over the head, throw you on our Norse shoulders, and whisk you away in the finest boats you've ever done seen. And I'm your host, Frankie, God of Mischief. And I'm joined by my little shield maiden, Jackfig, son of Stinkvork. And come with us and join us as we pillage our way through all things Welsh history.
Very good.
Do you like my Floki impression?
It was good.
God of Mischief. I'm Carlin.
Yeah.
Carlin sounds
Wondering
a bit
what,
Viking.
Carling? I was thinking the Carling.
Ice, Floki, I'm the God of Mischief, and you have Angus the gods by not drinking Carling.
You say so strange. Sounds like a burst of fucking blood vessel.
Every syllable hurts when you speak a bit like this.
You're turning into fucking Werner Herzog there.
I just heard it then.
Count every. I like to rape and pillage.
And I said to Timothy Treadwell, you must never watch the tips.
And I said that I did something I said I would never do, and I raped and pillaged the village.
If people don't know, Werner Herzog, he's a massive famous director who did the Wild Grizzly Man, I Lived with the Bears. And
there's tons of documentaries. He's a very good documentary maker, but a very unique voice.
But it's also like black comedy. It's like such dark humor. It's like in one of the episodes, especially the Grizzly Man one, he goes, and I did things I said I'd never do. And I'd always say I'd never do this year. It's just like so over the top. But
we actually quote him in a previous episode. I think it would be out by now. I really tried my hardest to find the clip of what we're trying to do. I couldn't find it fucking anywhere.
Well, do you know what I do like doing? The ooh, ooh, ooh. He has like this coyote music.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great. Everyone hasn't seen Grizzly Man. Watch Grizzly Man. It's fucking class.
But today we're talking about Floki and the God of Mischief.
It's a very rare sight to see.
That was a great impression of him. We've just come off the back of a really somber episode about Llywelyn, and
so we're keen to pick things up.
So kind of keen to pick things back up. So should we start with an old classic chat of what you're drinking tonight? Because we were respectful in the last episode, because you can't drink during a national tragedy. Well, actually, that's probably the best time to drink. But
yeah, exactly. I'm drinking the Budweiser.
Well, you're being Werner Herzog through and through, but I'm trying to essence Floki from Vikings.
they sound exactly the same to me.
I'm Floki. Sorry, I'll stop that now. It's because me and Emma have been watching Vikings, and I love Floki so much in it.
I know. You know how you are a bit of a cultural heathen when it comes to very specific franchises, I would say, what we said before, Harry Potter, Marvel, I'd say. You're not a big Star Wars.
Star Wars, Marvel.
I missed out on the hype of Vikings, because I watched the first 3 episodes, I think, and I liked it. I just, when there's ones who went, that was really good, and then I never put it on again.
Honestly,
and then the next time I looked into it, it was... it was fucking 5 seasons in, and I was like, that's a lot to
my favourite thing is medieval history, and I absolutely adore it. I got lucky that I grew up, and I also really like zombies. So I grew up in the zombie renaissance, the end of the 2000s and early 2020s.
You couldn't
Vikings.
Couldn't throw a fucking cat without it in a zombie film.
Everything was a zombie film. It was so much zombie stuff. And there's loads of medieval stuff like Vikings. Vikings just were huge. So Last Kingdom, one of the best TV shows ever. Vikings is amazing. Then there was a whole thing like Game of Thrones, loads of that kind of stuff came out. I watched Vikings first and loved it. And then it drifted off. It got quite poor towards the end. But then Last Kingdom came out, and I thought, Last Kingdom is the best. It's really well. It has 6 series. It knows what it is.
I do love Last Kingdom.
But then I rewatched Vikings, and I thought they were interchangeable. I thought, they're the same storyline, the same kind of thing. They are so different, and Vikings is so up your street. It's so rich in history, because originally it was a history show. It was on History Channel.
Because I remember I had to download it from the on maybe the not so legal websites where it was it was and I was like History Channel. I was like, like don't they just like fucking ancient alien documentaries and shit like that?
that Forged in Fire, where there's like 40-year-old men who like start making
Oh
knives.
god, yeah. My stepdad watches like it was like the hunt for the lost treasure or something. And it's like these guys who it's on like 8 seasons. They go, we're definitely gonna get this year. And it's like it's not never gonna happen.
Bigfoot, and then he told that history. But as I rewatched Vikings, and you know you love your North mythology, Jesus. It's like so steeped in that, like so much so that I thought it was going to be off-putting for Em. I thought she'd find it too like deep in lore and history. But the characters and stuff make it accessible, so even if you're not that bothered about all the history side of it, or the like all the cultural things. Like it's really like kind of artsy at periods. Like it's so much. What do you call it when you have like things on the screen that kind of depict like not just metaphors, but like it's very symbolic. So there's loads of like crazy intense the symbolism. So like people like it's a lot. It's too much slow motion. There's loads
a bit
of slow
like
motion.
It's a bit like The Northman, where like it starts off and you think it's like a normal kind. You think it's I'll follow like
hack
a guy,
slash.
A real hack and slash, and then it gets a bit like ethereal, like, and it's just,
definitely.
you don't know if it's in his head or like if it's like a mystical thing.
Yeah. So that's sometimes like they'll have like they'll see premonitions, and you just have to accept that's part of the show, even though the rest of the show is steeped in reality. But I think the idea is saying, well, this is their reality, but it's class. I mean, you'd really like it. You should 100% give it a go. The first 4 series are amazing, and it does drop off. And I think I'm one of the few out of people who I know who've watched it, have watched all of it. And I stuck with it as a slog towards the end. But the first 4 series are fantastic.
I think it's just one of those things. I with everything, I always think this. I go, oh, that's meant to be an amazing series, and I look at how much seasons there are to watch.
Yeah,
and it's like, how many episodes is it a season? Would you say
it's about 8 to 10?
8 to 10, and I think that's going to be 50 hours of my life. And it's like,
but what I'd say is,
I got to sit down and watch it. But I know as soon as I watch like the first 3,
you don't
4,
need to. I would say you can count it as series 1 to 4 as its own thing, because after that the story changes dramatically, and there's just new set casts and stuff.
This is I'll explain now. I won't do a spoiler for anyone who's listening. I saw an episode just at random, and I don't know if it was episode 4 or 5. Series 4 or 5, whatever. And I can probably guess what the event that changes everything is.
Yeah, I think you know. You've told me before. Yeah. So, but that doesn't. Even though you've seen that thing, that doesn't really matter, because by the time you see what you saw, that kind of storyline's over.
You've had a blast.
Yeah. And Vikings Valhalla, the spin-off, the first series was bad. The second series is really good. So I'm just a sucker for this era. So Vikings Valhalla, the second series, is class. It's really, really good.
Did you ever get around to watching that King Arthur thing that came out on ITV?
Honestly, like I have a blank spot for nearly every other cultural touchstone that have been since like any Marvel film, Star Wars film, Harry Potter, all that stuff that like took everyone. I spent all my time watching these. So I've watched I think I got nearly all of you boys onto Last Kingdom. I was a big. I watched. Got my friends into Valhalla. I've even watched the only thing I've ever watched that is, I forgot the name of it now. Like anime Viking thing.
Oh, Vinland Saga.
Vinland Saga.
I'm watching it at the moment. Yeah, that is actually very good.
Yeah,
and we get Welsh get a good rep in that as well.
Yeah, they have
surprisingly.
Vinland Saga is like a Japanese manga series, and I like those words I've never said before out loud. I've never watched any of that stuff, and I thought it was too much to get into. I thought it'd be too hard to get into that kind of to get past.
Don't wrong. It's got its anime tropes and stuff like that, which
I thought I'd find really off-putting. But it's like,
but it's so cool to see like them zoom out and you see the map, and they've got the stuff in Welsh. Like
they call it Banau Brycheiniog.
Yeah, Banau Brycheiniog. They got like the old kingdom names and stuff. And it's, we call it Wales and all that, even though. I mean that's what the
Saxons would call it.
The Saxons would have called it there, to be fair.
Well, we've gone heavy for the Viking child already. I think because it's just on the shows that we like anyway. But should we quickly just say, maybe we don't need to do normal stuff. If we just mention the Patreon. We won't do a huge plug for it because we don't want to bore you. But with the Patreons, available for you to sign up to now. There's going to be an episode. There'll probably be 2 episodes maybe by the time you sign up. But there's some content on there ready for you, and we've already had a good uptick of people signing up. So thank you so much for everyone who's joined. We're going to wait a little bit till we start thanking people because we're recording these in advance, so we just want to be a bit more on track.
Yeah, we're properly set up. Yeah. So if you want to find us, we're Tales for Wales, but it's unlike our normal handles, we're Tales for Wales, all the words, not the letter 4 in the middle, because I know we are that on other things. So yeah, if you want to find us on Patreon, just Google us. Not Google us, search on the Patreon. We'll be easy to find. But yeah, we're Tales for Wales, all the words. And we've got our usual like shit.
Just realised
stuff like that. You'll be able to see us.
Yeah, on the episode before this, we didn't tell them where to find us. We didn't give them.
Classic.
But once again, we always biff it.
Sharp, and it.
But we people might not know what Patreon is. Patreon is like a podcast app that loads of people use to give their listeners extra content, and it's a way of funding shows, but you get something back. So instead of before where you used to just send us money, which we were incredibly grateful for, but you sent us money and you didn't get anything in return. So this way you can contribute to the cost of running the pod, and all the money we get from it we're putting back into the pod for like marketing and stuff. And this way you'll get bonuses. So if you contribute £5 a month, you get 2 bonus episodes every month. If you contribute £10, you get personalised stuff like that. So if you head over to that Patreon, the link will be in the notes. You can find out all the extra stuff you get. And we dedicate a lot of this to you, the Patreon subscribers, because you're making this a lot easier to do. It's taking a lot of the financial burden away from us.
For a long time we thought we didn't really have the time to like do a extra paid membership stuff through, but there was a lot of clamoring for it from you guys. We kept getting asked again and again, and we thought, Christ, if there's people actually asking for it, maybe we should give it a go. So yeah, we're very happy that we've got a couple of sign-ups already, and
we've hit like a good rhythm for like down for recording, and we've hit like a good stride of how we should do it, and
we for a change, we're like quite ahead of our normal records, so it gives us a little bit of a leeway to do these ones.
And they're fun. We tend to do them after recording a proper episode, so they're a bit more loosey-goosey, but they're a good laugh.
There we are. That's our haphazard promotion for the 5th time.
Maybe we should actually write out the promotion.
Maybe. I mean, what we're doing now ain't working. So
because every single time we've done it, we've missed something important. Like last time, we didn't even tell them the actual way to find us, and we've never told them what Patreon is.
Yeah, Jesus.
Sorry.
We'll get there. We'll get there in the end.
Yeah, this is a journey for all of us. So thanks for coming along with us. Yeah. All right, shall I get into the? Or do you want to should we read out a thing, or should we just get straight in this week?
Yeah, go on, to get straight into it. You tell the gang what we're talking about today.
Well, we all know what we're talking about. We've just spoken about Vikings.
Don't even get me started on the episode title, mate.
So, we know about Vikings. We just spoke about Vikings for 10 minutes, and the title's called Vikings in Wales. That's how me and Emma, my partner, always speak to each other. We always try to break our voice. We go, "Oh, I love you." It's so weird.
You two just do the weirdest shit together. It's endearing, but it's I don't know where it comes from sometimes.
I often send you voice notes of her when I make her send you a voice note, or like us talking. Yeah.
It'll be you singing to me, doing some absolute made up
crap.
Sing
to you all the time, don't I?
Yeah, and then it'll turn. It'll be a brief pause, and there'll be Emma singing to me. I was like, oh, she's in on it. She knows that he does this. Yeah.
I do send you a lot of songs.
You do this. Oh, there we are. That's something for the Patreon. I'll chuck all them on there.
Oh yeah, we'll put a bunch of the songs on because I'm quite proud of them. Right. So Vikings in Wales. Do you know much about this?
I have briefly read a little bit when I was, that Princes of Wales episode we did, and I like the book that was kind of based on. It had a lot more in it than what I put in that episode, but it touched on like how the Vikings come over, and because like they had a big lot to do with Ireland.
Yes,
we had a lot of dealings with them and stuff, and they almost had like a foothold then because they could get to North Wales as well.
Right, cool. So I'll cover that. But I was going to say. Sometimes when I listen back to the old ones, I'm like, oh, I wish we did them now because we know so much more. But like, we only know so much more because we've done those ones and we've done this for a year. Like,
Yeah.
it's like if we'd have done this, because that book you read before, you did a whole episode on like Welsh princes.
But that book
where
even was only like it
touching.
had maybe like 22 Welsh rulers in it, including like Gwenllian and stuff like that. But it only did like real like tip of the iceberg stuff.
Yeah, that's
So,
why we're
but it
going
was
to do
a good
deep
place to
dives, aren't
start,
we?
you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, good. Yeah, exactly. So we got probably a lot of those people we've mentioned before. We're probably going to do actual
definitely
in-depth stuff on. Yeah.
So anyway, Vikings. I want to start off with who they are. So Vikings are from Scandinavia, which is present-day Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, which I always find mad. Like you had these renowned, world-renowned, terrifying, like brutish berserkers, like country conquerors, tearing down ancient towns and cities that have been around since the Romans, and they're like yapping like Wally Walrus. Like I hate the how does he say Woody Woodpecker? I hate King Alfred and the pesky Woodpecker.
Yeah. Don't mess with me. I'll tear down your little shanty town house.
It's funny. It's funny. It's so funny. It's King Alfred. These absolute beasts. Now we know the Vikings. So we know the Vikings changed the course of the history in the United Kingdom. They led to England uniting and eventually being defeated by the descendants of Vikings in the form of the Normans. But before that, the Norsemen had settled in many parts of England and ruled for themselves, and they ruled under what they called Danelaw in places like York. So, like York became this huge central hub for Vikings before it was anything massive in England. It's called Jorvik, and then it became like one of the capitals of England. It was often used by Edward Longshanks as his capital, and that was set up by the Normans. Not just the Normans. It was set up.
York.
They've sacked York. It was set up by the Vikings. So I'm not sure if I made that clear. Normans are descendants of Vikings. They're Vikings who settled in Normandy. And then Vikings also coexisted at the same time, but they were from Scandinavia. But so when the Vikings took over Normandy, they settled there, became Normans. The other ones who stayed in Scandinavia just stayed being Vikings.
They sort of became their own sort of offshoot then, didn't they, over the sort of however many years? I'm assuming
a couple of hundred years,
a couple of hundred years.
Yeah.
Go on, you carry on. Mate. It's always a cramp your style.
No, not at all. So we know the Vikings we're talking about, the ones from before like 1066 time, the ones who came over in the 700s and stuff like that. They had conquered parts of England and colonialized it, and they had their own proper towns. They ended up getting. They had settlements with kings, so they could end up having like actual thriving communities. Like you said, they conquered loads of Ireland and they conquered Dublin and set up Dublin as a massive base. So Dublin had loads of Viking kings and stuff in charge of the place. And they also conquered loads of the Hebridean Islands of Scotland and settled in mainland Scotland. So some of the Norwegian kings of the Vikings would settle up in the Hebridean Islands as their like central place for a while. But unlike Ireland, Scotland, and England, Wales had resisted any significant colonialisation from the Vikings. And it's not because they didn't try. They did try, but as I'll get to, they never managed to get a proper significant foothold. Now, the first recorded raid on Wales occurred in 1852. Most of these early recorded assaults from the Northmen were on places in North Wales like Ynys Môn or in English Anglesey. And so this early period, like 852. Did I say 1852?
You did earlier, yeah. I was thinking that seems quite late for
sorry
for the first recorded one. Yeah.
So the first recorded raid on Wales occurred 852. We do that all the time where we add like a 1 in front of it.
Mate, I was for anyone who listened to our last episode, I meant to say 80 something or 18 in front of everything. The amount of times I say 19, but I'm just hoping you guys will just look over that.
Also, someone once mentioned to us, did I say this on the pod, that we got the time when I was on that speed awareness course? I said if you stop 1 mile over 31, if you stop 31, if you go 31 miles per hour in a 30, it takes you 8 miles to stop longer.
I knew what you meant. You meant 8 mile an hour, like you're going 8 mile an hour faster when you brake or something.
Something like that. But you just went, I know. And someone said to me, it's like, you don't take 8 miles to stop by going 1 mile faster. That's the equivalent of going from like Penarth to Cardiff. It's like, oh my God.
Imagine the brake screech for fucking 20 minutes. Yeah, I knew what you meant at the time. And then instead of considering an audience, I went, I get him. I know what he's on about.
So this part here so this in the 800s and the following years is like I'm going to call that, and it's described as phase one of the Viking assault. So yeah, like I said, this
Say
is
that
often
again,
described.
mate.
So this first recorded one is the start of phase one of these Viking assaults on our beloved Wales. The Welsh Latin annals, commonly known as the Annals Cambria, which is like the written history of a period. These Annals Cambria are a key source of like the political impact the Vikings had on Wales. And these annals frequently refer to Viking raids on various parts of Wales. For example, in 853, they say that Anglesey ravaged by black heathens. And throughout these annals, they refer to the Vikings as black heathen or heathen, which is also how they're described in the Irish annals. Then another important source for the is the Chronicle of the Princes, or Brut y Tywysogion in Welsh. The Chronicle records an attack circa 853 on Mona, the Latin name for Ynys Môn, or in English, Anglesey, in which the island was destroyed by these pagans. That's how it records it. It was
It's interesting, isn't it, that they call the Vikings pagans when we're sort of the Welsh are descended from what would have been called pagans.
This
back when the
period,
Roman
they
conquest
would be
happened,
Christian. So at this time in Wales, we were Celtic
Oh yeah,
Christian.
it'd be like Celtic Christians. Yeah, that's it.
But that's the same trouble they had in England. Like they used to call the Saxons pagans, and then the Anglo-Saxons settled and they became Christian and called the Norse pagans. So it is funny. A pagan just means not Christian, doesn't it? It's just like everything.
not or just not what I fucking do, and then it's like they're baddies. Yeah.
But yeah, this recorded attack in 853 on Ynys Môn, like they torched the place. It was absolutely destroyed. They burnt it to the ground, killed everybody who was there, and it became a base for the Vikings to settle and defend whilst they were getting replenished and restocked. And that's what they did in Dublin and other places. They'd often find somewhere to defend and then wait for their reinforcements to come, get replenished. And they'd done that all over England, Scotland and Ireland. But there was one plucky little fella who came to save the day in Wales. And that plucky little fucker was called Rhodri ap Merfyn, a.k.a. your friend of mine, the late, the great Rhodri Mawr. And
yeah, baby.
We got to do a whole episode. Of course, we're going to do a deep dive on him. We listen, mate. We're going to do it, yeah. But for now, this is a quick snapshot. He is often dubbed the first Welsh ruler to be given the title Mawr, or in English, Great. So he's called Rhodri the Great, or Rhodri Mawr. Rhodri rose to power during a tumultuous era where the fate of Welsh kingdoms was often determined by the power of their leaders. And he was such a powerful ruler, ruling most of Wales, which was the kingdoms. So he ruled the kingdoms of Gwynedd, Powys, and Saesllwg. Didn't say that very well.
Saesllwg, yeah. That one doesn't get a lot of airtime in history.
It's an ancient.
But it was, it was not the biggest, was it? But that used to be quite a major one. And I think didn't that get adopted into one of the others? I can't remember, officially. So and that just went then, yeah.
Yeah, so we still have Gwynedd today. We still have Powys today. We don't have Deheubarth in the west, which he did end up taking over. But he, Saesllwg. How can you say it to me?
Saesllwg.
Yeah. He that's one that kind of just like I said, it got incorporated. But you don't hear about that so much. But it's ancient. This is like over 1,000 years ago.
Oh yeah, that one got like incorporated so early on, wasn't it? That it became. I can't remember which one it got incorporated into, to be honest. But then that just became it went into Powys or something. That was just Powys from then on, wasn't it?
And so he was this powerful ruler of 3 kingdoms now. And he did the impressive job of fighting off the Anglo-Saxons to the east and fighting the Vikings to the north and the west. And before I go back to the Vikings, when I was researching Rhodri Mawr, I stumbled upon his descendants, who include famous rulers like Hywel, which just shows like nepotism has always been at play. Like the amount of times we go, oh, this is the descendant of Llywelyn ap Griffith or Llywelyn Fawr, or Hywel came from Rhodri Mawr. And then, fucking insane turn up for the books. Another descendant is apparently Eminem.
No.
Eminem. Sir Marshall of Mathers himself.
Sir Marshall the Great.
There was an S4C, which is like the Welsh language Channel 4 show, and an article about him and some stuff on the Wales Online. Like I said, he showed they did research on him, and he's related to Rhodri Mawr, which, if he's related to royalty...
fucking episode of like Who Do You Think You
Yeah,
Are?
well,
But
it was a Welsh
Eminem's on
version of
there,
Who
and
Do You
he's
Think You Are? It was like a Welsh and because he's got like because he wasn't on the show, they just did it about him because they didn't have the resources to bring him over, but they just did a show.
I was about to say that's too big a budget for SVOC, not to slam him, but yeah.
But I was thinking, if he's related to royalty, then surely we are. It does seem like everyone at some point has some link to kings of the past because like kings were like incessant shaggers, weren't they? So,
well,
like,
yeah, for the most part.
And like, I just think, well, if someone who now lives in America in like Detroit, like, surely we got some royal blood in us. We got
just trying. Come on, put us on the fucking throne. I dare you.
I dare you. So anyway, back to the Vikings. So by the time the Vikings were stinking up the place in Ynys in the Kingdom of Gwynedd, which is in North Wales, Rhodri was the king there, so he was absolutely having none of it. So like he was in charge of these two other kingdoms, but like Gwynedd was his bread and butter, which he inherited from his dad. So yeah, he managed to lead a successful resistance against the Norse brutes. And in 855 to 856, Rhodri won an important, emphatic win, killing the Danish leader, King Gorm. And then two further victories by Rhodri recorded in the Bruta Tywysgogion for 872. The first battle was at a place named as Bangolai, where the Vikings in Ynys were again defeated in a vicious battle that apparently lasted incredibly long. It was incredibly fierce. And the second battle was again in the north, and it was kind of them mopping up any remaining Vikings. So it wasn't as intense, but it was just them kind of like clearing the scourge.
Yeah, stamping them out. Yeah, I always think it's quite interesting. Like, you look back in the like Celtic culture. It'll be before this now because, like you said, at this point in time, they'd have been like Celtic Christians as opposed to like diehard Celts that came before. Yeah. But there's so much in common with Celts and the Old Norse, like the whole thing of a good death is like worth pursuing, and it's
shield maidens,
things like that. And it's I always find it very interesting that you never see Celts in sort of popular culture. Vikings, everyone knows about like Valhalla and that how that's why Vikings were so like revered as good warriors, because they fucking craved like a good death. It was a worthwhile pursuit for them.
I do think that's the smartest thing any religion's ever done. Like religions often need to control the masses. If you're a warfaring nation and you can be like, oh, actually, the best way to get to heaven, salvation, is to die fighting for our cause. It's like such a clever way of doing it.
And like the harder you fight, the like sort of the better rank you'll have in heaven. Like you'd be like, why wouldn't I fucking throw myself into battle?
Yeah. And another reason, I'm not sure if I cover this in my notes later on, but just in case I don't, the reason Wales fared better was, surprisingly, Wales was like usually very disjointed. It had lots of kingdoms made up of Wales. So like we said, Deheubarth, Powys, Gwent, Glamorgan, Gwynedd, all these places. Because he controlled a large swathe of it, like he owned massive kingdoms. Gwynedd was huge, Powys was massive. He could call upon soldiers quickly, and they wanted to fight for him. Whereas in like England, you had these three. You had like East Anglia. You had like 8. I think it's like 7 or 8 little kingdoms, and then you had Cornwall, and then you had like the north with Britain was still there, and then you had the Scottish. It was far less like. As if you watch shows like the Vikings, you realise they end up having to lean on each other, who are like enemies, like Northumbria and East Anglia and Wessex, all have to rely on each other, but they can often be slow to. So, say if you're getting attacked, they sometimes want you to be attacked, so you're weakened. So when they do arrive, they have less. So if say you were allies,
and also I get what you mean. If Northumbria was under attack, you might, if you're a neighbouring nation, you might go
wait a bit longer.
Oh, let's wait a little bit, and then the terms of me coming in will be very, very generous. Then be like, right, I'll take a bit of your land when I fucking help you beat them back.
Those kingdoms often had alliances with each other in writing, and it's if I get attacked, you come. If you get attacked, I come, because the enemy of my enemy. The bigger. The fact that I don't like you, but I hate the Vikings more, and they're a threat to both of us, so they team up. But they would often stitch each other up, whereas Wales didn't have that problem at this time, so they could call on a large army. So Rhodri won these massive battles because he could also call upon his men. And then I'm going to quickly read from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles of 893, where it's recorded that Viking armies were being pursued by combined forces of the West Saxons and the North Welsh along the River Severn. And it's one of those instances where I just kind of mentioned that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And a lot of these old enemies in Britain decided there was enough people to hate and kill before you had a bunch of Vikings.
Rather stamp out the Vikings than have a quarrel with you now. We can fight another day once we've got the Vikings out of here. Yeah,
exactly. So this mixed army of Saxons and Welsh combined and engaged in battles with the Vikings, which culminated in this great battle of Buttington, which Jack's going to cover in a few weeks' time. So I think that's in like 2 weeks' time. Jack's going to do the Battle of Buttington, which will be interesting. And that's kind of the end of phase one. At the end of Battle of Buttington, it's like that's where
we
phase
sort
one
of kicked them out for a little bit. Is it quelled the invasion?
Yeah. It quelled the style of invasion that's going on. So in this part, they're trying to colonialize and they're trying to do it in other countries. And that kind of stopped here. So now we go to phase two. And it's around 100 years after the first phase. And it's when these horny helmeted mates of ours, aka the Vikes, decided not to bother settling due to the fierce and unified resistance. So I was just reading my notes when I realised I mentioned this a second ago, but it's worth mentioning, as I said, that Rodri was like sole ruler compared to the other places, and he could rely on allies. And it just shows that the United Wales could be so powerful, but it just could never grow up and stop bickering.
Yeah, exactly. There's those moments in history that we often romanticize, where it's like when you got someone who is at the helm and they lead like maybe 2 or 3 of the kingdoms, and it's like things go so well, and it's like, why don't you see how well it's going? And it's like, and then as soon as you split up, there's always a divide, and then we just do shit at the bed.
You do forget though how important character is, like in terms of like having an enigmatic leader. Like you have like Barack Obama, and then in America, people on the left were so much more connected. Donald Trump, having him, it disagrees with politics or whatever, but he unified and he unites people compared to anybody else against him.
Well, you can't doubt that he gets the people, gets bums on seats, doesn't he?
Like Keir Starmer here isn't like he means nothing. He's got no substance either way. Like Rishi Sunak, they're just so uninspiring. No matter, like if you're on the left, Keir Starmer's not really impressive. If you're on the right, Rishi Sunak's not impressive. There's no. If you have a proper strong leader, I think sometimes I forget the importance of a leader, and like you realize when things
charisma cannot be a mistake, and it like that being able to fucking convince you that what you're saying is worth hearing. That is like such a huge tool.
And also, I just said a second ago, they should stop bickering like a pair of tarts. That's not sexist, because tarts can be boys or girls, all right? So you can't do me for it.
Exactly.
Anyway, the Vikings, so they knew they couldn't set up an established camp to build upon like they had done in Ireland and the UK. So they instead now opted for raiding, something they knew how to do like amazingly well with devastating effect. So in the latter half of the 10th century, the Vikings carried out horrendous raids on the undefended coastal lowlands areas for attack. So like the Ynysmôn, the monasteries at Penmon and Caergybi at Ynysmôn, and Tywyn in Gwynedd, and St David's in Clonoghenfawr, St Dogmaels in Pembrokeshire, Llanbadan in Ceredigion, Llantwit Major and Llancavan in Vale Glamorgan. So that's like all of the coastal areas of Wales.
The closest bits to the sea, essentially, which is like their absolute.
And if you picture Wales looks like a pig's head, the map of Wales does, which I always find funny. They kind of just did all of the coast. And these raids involved.
What are you going to say? He did his ears, they did his head, they did his snout.
Did a little snout. These raids involved stealing all the wealth from the holy sites that were often undefended. So raping, pillaging, and murdering swathes of these coastal towns, which is where we're from. So that's pretty terrifying. And they did attack Barry and the Vale Glamorgan.
If we were still on our Celtic roots, we wouldn't have these monasteries full of gold, because all the gold and the worthwhile stuff would be in the bottom of a fucking lake where we'd thrown it in. So
that
would have been golden. Yeah.
Also, so this is kind of I'll get to this in a bit, but it's detrimental to the Celtic Church, which was very prominent at the time. The Celtic Church was huge in Wales, but the Vikings plundered so much and took so much of the gold and stuff and all the valuable stuff there. In 1989, Menedith ap Owain, who's great-great-grandson of Rodri Mawr, paid a group of Vikings a penny per head in exchange of all the Welshmen they'd captured and taken into slavery during their raids. So, like, people, like leaders, having to buy back their people because so many people were getting stolen.
Yeah.
And this was the way of the Vikings in Wales, never making much headway in the mainland, but just being an awful nuisance on the outskirts.
Yeah, I was going to say, just an absolute thorn in the side.
Also, awful on the outskirts. That sounds like an album from like an indie landfill band from the 2000s. Like, I bet that you look awful on the outskirts. Red Love Viking 1964.
I was gonna say, are you about to say that like, and of course, awful on the outskirts was that Manic Street Preacher song that they brought out in whatever. I was thinking because I was like, awful on the outskirts, baby.
I tried to make that work to. I bet that you look awful on the outskirts. Ready like a Viking 1964.
Oh, I'm so sorry that was well missed on me. That went right over my head.
That's quite good. I'm proud of that.
That was good. Yeah, now you've explained it. It was good.
And in 1991, the Brute, that thing that Bruto Toasogyon I mentioned, records an attack on Anismore.
You're going to have to say that again, because you said 1991. I would have been 1 year old. I'm assuming this didn't happen.
Jesus, we're so dyslexic, man. In 991, the Brute, that annal history recorded big book of like Welsh history, records an attack on Anismore by the pagans once again. This time on Ascension Thursday, which I don't think I looked into any further than that, but it must be a holy day.
Ascension Thursday sounds intense.
Yeah. And then in 1999, the Vikings depopulated, in quotations, which is such a posh way of saying killed the shitting fuck out of the place. Absolutely.
Depopulated. That is, why use the euphemism?
I know. Yeah. But they said they depopulated Menevia, which was a Catholic diocese in South Wales. And I don't quite know what diocese is.
I think, and I'm not 100% on this. It's only from what I read about the St. David stuff. It's like, I'm going to say it wrong. Diocese.
Yeah.
I can't.
Diocese. Diocese
or something. Yeah. Anyway, it's like the area that priest or whatever covers, I think. Well, so like St. David's diocese was down at St. David's.
Yeah, West Wales kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think it's something to do with that. Yeah.
Well, that's what they did. So
correct us if I'm wrong, guys.
Yeah. Well, they depopulated this place called Meneva, and then they killed the bishop there, Bishop Morganai. And then in the same year, Menedith ap Owain, dubbed one of the most celebrated kings of the Britons, when he died, the kingdoms of Dyfed were raided. Following his death, there was like kind of open slaughter for people in Dyfed because they lost their ruler. So, like I said, they didn't make a huge headway, but they weren't. They still had an impact. They weren't just like, they left Wales alone after this. They just tried an invasion, didn't work, and then they just stuck to what they knew. Raiding parties from mostly from Dublin.
It's almost like petty. It's can't take you, can we? Right, fuck off then. We're going to just be a real knobhead to you now.
And they did the entire coastline, so you couldn't be waiting to defend. They'd hit anywhere.
I imagine living anywhere on the coast at that point would be
so scary.
You'd almost think everyone would like retreat inland because you'd be like, fuck this, like I don't want to be.
There's
a Viking raid could happen at any point.
In Barry, which is named after St. Baddock, there's if you go to Jackson Bay, there's the old church of St. Baddock, which got attacked because the way the hill goes, you couldn't see the Vikings come up the hill, and they came from Flatholme and Steepholme in the Severn Estuary, and whenever I walk the dog there, I just think, fuck, that'd be so scary to just see them climbing up this cliff edge.
Like you said, they had cool as fuck looking boats as well with like dragons fucking carved into them and all sorts of things. It would it'd be scary, man.
Dead scary. So now, we're now on to phase 3, which is happened in the 11th century, so the 1000s. And during this period, the Viking presence in Severn Estuary, which is the channel between England and Wales, ramped up again, with many parts of the south were ravaged, and Vikings started to actually make bases and set up for longer periods. So one account from this period recalls how Count Olaf, a Dane in the service of King Canute, plundered and marauded across Glamorgan in South Wales without having to fight any huge armies or strong resistance. The clergy of the monastery of St. Cadog, which is in Barry as well, is in the village of Llancavan, fled with the holy relics and the shrine of St. Cadog. So they got attacked, they ran away, they got to Monmouthshire, only to be attacked again by Vikings, and this time the attacker killed a bunch of monks and he took his axe to the shrine of St. Cadog. And I'm not sure if we discussed this before, but the last invasion and the battle with the Vikings that first started raiding. So, we said earlier there's like Vikings and there's Normans, and there's a kind of crossover to who genetically they are. But the first Viking raid started in the UK in 793, and then the last happened in 1066. And if you're thinking, oh, that's convenient, because the same year that the Normans conquered. So in essence, the English were fighting the remaining Vikings of the past, and then this modern version of Vikings in the form of the feudal knights from Normandy. So in England, they were fighting Vikings from the first set of Vikings, plus their hybrid, the Normans.
The Normans, yeah.
And I know this is a Welsh history podcast, but please allow me this for a moment, because I find it really fascinating.
Yeah. No, go for it.
The last invasion from the Vikings that we were talking about now, so again, not the Normans, the Vikings who we talk of in like, the TV show Vikings, horny helmets.
What is popularly seen as those two horned helms, even though I don't think they actually wore those, but still.
No. So the last invasion from them was led by Harold Hardrada, and he was invading Harold of Wessex, also known as Harold Godwinson. So Godwinson was down the south of England with a great big army of English awaiting the invasion of the Normans led by William the Conqueror. So that's kind of like, everyone knows this. Well, lots of people know this, and if you went to school, people often get taught about this because it's kind of how England's defined. But most of his men, so Harold Godwinson was waiting down at the south, waiting for this attack from France. Most of his men, they were militia, and they needed to be sent back home in September time to do their harvest. And then whilst this was happening, Harold Hardrada invaded further up north in England. So Harold Godwinson had to leave his position in the south, hurry as fast as he could, picking up troops along the way, and he got to York and he had to beat Harold Hardrada in the Battle of Stamford Bridge. And apparently it was a surprise attack, and he obliterated Harold Hardrada. He obliterated his brother, who was also turned against him. And this is the last battle the Vikings that we regard as Vikings ever had in the UK, and it's also regarded as the end of the Viking era. This battle was the last thing they saw and did, but it came at a huge cost. Harold Godwinson lost a huge amount of men himself, and then William invaded really quickly after, so he had to head all the way back down again with his men battered.
Those Vikings, in true fashion, had been enough of a pain in the ass to affect a major battle.
Well, that's it. So his men arrived battered, bloodied, exhausted, and then lost the Battle of Hastings. So, after 300 years of trying to conquer England, the Vikings sort of succeeded, but it wasn't them who'd rule.
Just by proxy, almost.
It would be their offspring in the form of the Normans. So, it's mad. Like, they spent 300 years trying to occupy England. They end up dying out, but because of their last battle, they weakened England enough to get conquered.
So almost that's a nice little tidbit in there. Don't get me wrong, if I've got a huge bias to Wales, so if Welsh offshoot had won in that fashion, and the real Welsh had sort of weakened them, I'd be like, so basically we did win. So
exactly. You feel bad for the Anglo-Saxons, don't you? You feel like, Jesus, this guy is fighting all across the country. But so that's the end of phase 3, really. But I'm now going to talk about the political alliances and the cooperation. Because occasionally there was cooperation between Vikings and the Welsh, and mostly in the form of mercenaries to support individual political ambitions and struggles of various Welsh leaders. So in 990, Meredith hired a group of Vikings willing to join him in attacking Glamorgan. Another example was Griffith ap Llywelyn, who was born in 1010 and ruled from 1039 until 1055. And before I go on, we're going to cover him because he's like an A-list of Welsh leaders. But just in case people think we're going to skip over him. And the reason he's so important is he's regarded as the first and the last native king to rule all of Wales. And that might sound at odds with what we said sometimes before, where we said Llywelyn ein Llywolaf, or Llywelyn the last, as the last native king of Wales, or Llywelyn Fawr, or Owain Glyndŵr. We've called them princes and kings of Wales, but the distinction is Griffith ap Llywelyn ruled all of what we call modern Wales.
Yeah. When we normally say, with Owain Fawr, for example, Llywelyn ap Griffith and all that, it's what it is they own essentially the majority of the kingdoms in Wales. Yeah. So by de facto, they own Wales.
But what we call modern Wales now, none of them had completely controlled it. There was the martial lords in the south, or rulers in West Wales and Deheubarth or whatever. So Griffith ap Llywelyn was contending for. So as I said, we'll do a whole episode on him. But in this story now, he was contending to try and take the throne of. No, he was contending for the throne of Deheubarth in West Wales, having already been hailed King of Gwynedd and Powys. And he was faced with an assault by a Viking fleet led by a fellow Welshman named Howell ab Edwin in 1044 at Abertawe. It was Howell's final attempt to keep his kingdom after he'd been driven out into Haybath by Griffith the year before. And I'm not going to go into any further than that because it'll be like a spoiler to that whole episode. Another instance is when the Vikings and the Welsh fought again in 1055, when an alliance between Griffith and Aelfgar, Earl of Anglo-Saxon Kingdom of East Anglia, who had been exiled on charges of treason, he sacked Hereford with the help of 18 Viking ships from Dublin. They marched on the city on the 24th of October, and it was an obliteration for the East Anglians, who were led by some poor sod called Ralph the Timid, Earl of Hereford.
I hope he didn't go into the battle with that name. Jesus Christ.
That's what I thought.
Who are we having a go at? Who's fighting us? Or Ralph the Timid? I think it'll be all right.
Jimmy shit his pants. I think we're going to old Jimmy shit pants.
It's old Jimmy the Cuck is coming into it, yeah.
I mean, like, talk about nature or nurture. Like, calling some poor bloke timid, then saying defend against this marauding Welsh and Viking army. You don't stand a chance, mate.
Yeah.
The newly built cathedral, built by Bishop Athelstan, who's like a really famous bishop, who's mentioned in Vikings a lot, that was looted, and 7 of the clergymen were killed. So, like, the Welsh were just as, like, pretty barbaric as the Vikings would be perceived. Captives were taken and plundered. So they took slaves, they took them back to Wales, and they left the city burning. So, like, it was pretty hardcore from the when the Vikings and Welsh teamed up. It wasn't pretty. And then my last bit I'm going to go through is Viking influence in Wales. So the Vikings ended up having a big impact on the toponymy in Wales, and still to today we have a load of places in Wales that still use Norse or Viking names given to them. So toponymy is like the way names are given or the history of names. So the reason we have lots of places in Wales named after Vikings is attributed to the early Normans. So these early Normans who settled in Wales came to Wales, would most likely be of the same lineage of the Viking raiders and settlers that attacked the Welsh coast in the 9th century. So when the Normans came in like 1066 and the following years, they kind of respected the names that the Vikings before them had given. So a lot of the Cymro Normans, so the Norman people who settled here, would use the names that were given to before rather than the native ones. So, for example, there is no English word for Anglesey. Anglesey is a Scandinavian word, and Ynysmôn is what we call it in Welsh. So when we say, we'll say this in English, it's not actually an English word, it's a Scandinavian word.
Because it's like the English word would be the Isle of Mona, isn't it? Well, I say Isle of Mona. That was Latin, I guess.
The Latin,
But yeah, because I've always thought like as Ynysmôn, Anglesey, they're nothing alike.
Yeah.
A lot of the English and Welsh translations of places, you can sort of derive where it is. Yeah.
So by the time it came to Middle English, these words just stuck because the Viking, that was just what they used in modern English then. So, and like I said, Wales wasn't colonialised by the Vikings, so we don't have a huge amount of places named after them. But the biggest impact can be seen on the coastal areas because that's where they did a lot of their attacking. Yeah. So I've got some examples for you sweet little ear holes. As I mentioned, Anglesey, Ynysmôn, Scandinavian origin, a prominent, and it was one of the most heavily contested places in North Wales because it's an island just off North Wales where they could use the base.
It's too easy for people from like the island, Vikings from Ireland to get to, wouldn't it? That must
the English used it as well. The English did it a lot, and in their campaigns against Wales, they'd often go, take their boats there. And then the English names for Caldy Island in Welsh is Ynys Beard, Grasholm, Ynys Gwalis, Flatholm, Welsh Ynys Echni, and Steepholm, which is just up north. All of these are named after Vikings and were used as their bases when they were raiding the mainland. And home is spelled Holm, and it means it's an Old Norse word for like island in an estuary. So it's like and it's those islands you get that are like between rivers and sea. Wales' second largest city, Swansea, in Welsh, Abertawe, is said to have been founded by Svein Forkbeard, who was shipwrecked in the bay there. So there's no English word for Swansea. Swansea again comes from
Swansea.
Svein Forkbeard. And sticking in Swansea, down the Gower Peninsula, there's a place called Worm's Head. If you've ever been there, it's like a really pretty beach, or like a pretty coastal path. Really, really pretty, very popular. And Worm's Head, I always thought it was a mad name for it. But the worm was the Norse word for dragon, and they spell it with a Y, but it's just now mutated to worm.
Yeah.
So we call it WORMS head, but really for them it's worm. And the Vikings believe that island looks like a sleeping dragon, which it actually does. If you look at Worm's Head, it's all craggy and scaly like a dragon resting his head. So that's why it's called Worm's Head. And then in Cardiff, there are settlements along the River Taff and River Rumney. This has led to some of the capital streets still having Old Norse names. So Dumbles Road, Warnaby Street, and Lambby Way are all Viking names.
No way.
The latter was a Viking settlement during the trading along the River Rumney, while Dumbles Road is believed to have been another camp. And Warnaby Street hasn't changed significantly in 1,200 years, making it the oldest lane in Cardiff. And it's our favourite place for drinking, wasn't it? It used to be.
And I was about to say, we've had some altercations with bouncers on that street for sure.
Yeah, we had our own raiding party there, haven't we? We had a few scraps on that street. And we have the Norwegian Church Arts Centre in Cardiff, which continues like the traditional Scandi influence in the city. And then in Milford Haven, which isn't a haven for milfs, it's probably it's contrary to that. No, it's in 854 AD. A Viking chief called Hubba spent the winter there.
Mate, you're not dissuading of this thing. Why was he going Hubba if it wasn't full of milfs? Like, come on.
Yeah. Well, he settled there with 23 ships, bestowing the name upon the village Hubberston. Hubba. Sorry. And then you got Skomer and Stockholm, and you get the idea.
Johnny Bravo, fucking docking up. Come in, Hubba. Come on, baby.
Yeah, we're all raided. You get the idea. A lot of Welsh seaside towns took the brunt of these Viking raids, but thanks to the powerful commander Rhodri Vawr, most Welsh survived unscathed from the Northmen. And like I said earlier, the other impact they had was the Scandinavian Northmen attacked the rich defensive monasteries, which led to a big decline in the vitality and influence of the Celtic Church. So I think it's come from a TED Talk.
Right, that's good. That's interesting.
I spoke for about an hour there. My head is killing me.
I can't breathe. My nose is bleeding.
Yeah, being a rubbish Viking.
No, I was good, mate. That's interesting because you think, you certainly never see in popular media it's always the Vikings and the English. Well, it's always portrayed as the English essentially.
Yeah.
It's not even.
Well, that's the thing.
Anglo-Saxons. It's
in Last Kingdom, it's so annoying that they pretend that, they had that one episode they raid North Wales, and then he goes, "We are men of Wales, we do not bow down," and then it's meant to be King Howell. It's just so inaccurate. I think, it's so easy to learn that.
Mate, I think we talked about on this pod before, where we were having a pint in the water guard down the bay, and we were saying about how we were like, King Howell's in it, and we're like, Howell, we love Howell, he's like fucking big time boy. And they make him look like such a fucking pussy in it.
Yeah, and it's just so annoying. It's even
though he's one of the most successful defenders of it,
Yeah, well, Rhodri's grandfather. It's Wales, out of all the places in the UK, wasn't conquered by the Vikings. So it's just it's annoying. I don't want to end on that note, so we'll end on. Can you? Yeah, subscribe to the Patreon if you have the money, if you can afford to. Don't worry if you can't. If you can't, we'd love it if you could review us on review us on any platform you're listening to, and follow us on social media. Tales for Wales.
Oh yeah, reviews are worth their weight in gold, just not as much as actual money. So
I need to go for a week.
Whatever you can do. Yeah, no worries. Cheers all. Ta-ra, ta-ra, ta-ra. Diolch. Bye.